Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. And if folks join us, we're just going to do introductions for a few minutes, so you won't miss anything at all. But hi, everyone. My name is Kate Featherston. I use she, her pronouns. I am an Associate Dean of Admissions at Bowdoin College. Really excited to join everyone tonight for a special session with Bowdoin and Williams, specifically for QuestBridge applicants. So I have a colleague of mine from Williams. Carolina, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Carolina Chenike. I'm the Associate Director for Diversity Recruitment at Williams, and happy to be here with you all.
Great, thank you. We also are joined by some fabulous current students. So maybe we'll start with a student from Williams and then go from there.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan. I'm a junior at Williams, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi everyone, I'm Yenevith. I'm a senior at Bowdoin. Excited to be here as well.
Hi everybody, my name is Yaritza and I'm also a senior at Bowdoin and also very excited to be here.
Great, thanks everyone. So tonight's session will really be a deep dive into both Bowdoin and Williams to give you an idea of what our schools offer. We're really similar in a lot of ways, which is why we teamed up for tonight's call. But then we'll leave plenty of time for a Q&A. So get some questions bubbling, and especially for our current students, what a great opportunity to ask them questions about their match lists. I forgot to mention this, but they're all QuestBridge scholars. So great resource for you as you're considering the QuestBridge match and where you might want to rank. So we'll go ahead and get started with a quick overview of Bowdoin. For those of you this may be the first time learning about us, the name is kind of funny. Sometimes it looks like Bowdoin. That's certainly what I said when I first started learning about Bowdoin back when I was in high school. I'm also a Bowdoin alum, but it is pronounced Bowdoin. Just kind of pretend that there isn't an O there, and that is how we look at it. We are located in Maine, and we are a college of just under 2,000 students in coastal Maine. We're about a 20-minute drive from the coast in a town called Brunswick. You can see us, there, that little blue dot up at the corner, right along the coast here in Maine. We get all 4 seasons, so campus will look like this in about a month, which we're very excited for. But right now it's a beautiful fall. We're also home to Brunswick, which is our town. This is a picture of Main Street, which is right next to campus. Lots of shops, restaurants, bookstores, an Amtrak station. Really nice and accessible for students to be able to get off campus. We're also pretty close to Portland, which is Maine's largest city. It's about a 30-minute drive down the road. We also have trains and buses that head into Portland if you want to go to a concert or an art museum that's off campus. A really great opportunity for students to have. It also has an airport. Our students are coming from all over the country, all over the world. We have students that are international as well as domestic. About 11% of our students are from international backgrounds. About 39% of our incoming class are students of color. About 16% are first generation, and about 70% come from outside New England. So we are trying to create a kind of microcosm of the world here in New England. Our location also gives us access to the outdoors. This is the Schiller Coastal Study Center, which is that just 20-minute drive from campus. It's a marine science laboratory for students, as well as a place for our sailing team to practice. There are lots of trails and opportunities for folks in the humanities to take advantage of that resource as well. But a really cool opportunity for our students just so close to campus. We are a liberal arts college, just like Williams, and for us that means that we want you to study across the curriculum, and you'll see in our most popular majors here we have everything from the humanities to the arts and the sciences and kind of everything in between, and it's pretty common for our students to double major. We were founded for this idea called the common good, which is this concept that institutions like Bowdoin should take their resources, their talents, their time to be able to benefit the world around them, not just for personal gain. And that's something that's really ingrained into life at the college and also how we teach. Because we have small class sizes, our average class size is under 30 students. You'll get to interact with your professors in a really profound way. And you'll be able to take your academics outside the classroom. We're a top producer of national fellowships like the Fulbright, and our students are often found studying abroad or studying away. About half of our students will do that during their time here. Our students go on to really fruitful careers, whether that's in the nonprofit space. I think our common good focus is something that a lot of students cling onto in terms of what they'd like to do after Bowdoin. But there's also a lot of Bowdoin graduates in the for-profit corporate space, like the CEO of Netflix, for example. We also are a top producer of graduate school students. So about 20% of the most recent graduates go on to graduate school right away. And these are some of the top destinations for folks after college. But while you're here, we really want to make sure that you're supported. So starting from day one, you'll have the support of the college, whether that's through our advising resources, and I'll talk about that in a second, but also through the digital excellence commitment, which is something that Bowdoin has regardless of students' financial background. Every student receives a full suite of Mac products. The reason for this is we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page technologically and that everyone has access to the same resources starting day one. Students are also supported by initiatives like Thrive, which is our program for first-generation low-income students, the Center for Multicultural Life, the Center for Learning and Teaching, tons of professional offices on campus that work on advising and mentorship for students. But there are also hundreds of different clubs that students can join. It's a really thriving residential community, whether that's the Latin American Student Organization, the QuestBridge Student Group, dance groups, chamber ensembles, a cappella groups, D3 or club sports. We also have the nation's oldest continuously published college newspaper and more. And I'll leave you with The Offer of the College, which is a poem that is all over campus. It's on tote bags, it's on posters, and is basically what we value as an institution. If you have any questions about Bowdoin or any questions about QuestBridge, happy to help. And I will turn it over to Carolina, who will chat a little bit about Williams.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to do that age-old awkward thing of trying to share my screen while I start talking. Okay, hopefully that worked. All right, hi everybody. So once again, I'm here from Williams. I'm just going to talk about a couple of highlights and then we will get to your questions. So Williams is located in Massachusetts. We're basically as far north and as far west as you can get in the state of Massachusetts. A really beautiful town in a place called the Purple Valley. Often when the sun sets, the mountains look somewhat purple. And so you can kind of sort of take in this really beautiful natural space in a town that is most definitely rural. That is good to say up front. We are a small town out in the countryside. And that does make for a really beautiful setting, but certainly not necessarily one that absolutely everybody's looking for. But I think it's beautiful and a really great place to be a student. Our students, much like at Bowdoin, come from all across the country, all around the world, and they come here and they make this a really dynamic and interesting place to be a student. So at Williams, we're a small school. We have about 2,200 students. Our average class size is 13. And so you really get all of those great benefits of being at a small liberal arts college where, the experience can be really personalized. Professors are going to get to know you. They will be walking around the science quad. You will dog sit for them. You will, see them around town and build these really great relationships with them that really, I think, enrich the experience of being a student. And then there are a number of ways that Williams has tried to very intentionally put students and professors into settings where they can get to know each other really well in an academic space. So one example of that is with our tutorial system. So essentially, tutorials are these classes based on the Oxford style of teaching that are meant to be really, really small, really personalized, and really in-depth explorations of a particular topic. So these are essentially classes of 2 students and 1 professor. And the way that it works is that you have your tutorial partner assigned at the beginning of the semester when you sign up to take one of these courses. And your professor is going to do that according to whatever they think makes for an interesting pairing. Maybe it's 2 students who have really different academic backgrounds. Maybe it's 2 students who have a shared academic interest who can really dive deeply into that in these courses. And essentially, these courses look a lot like other classes in a lot of ways. So you're going to meet once a week, every week with your professor and with your partner. And you're going to follow a course syllabus just like you do for other classes, where each week maybe you have readings that you have to do or a certain topic that you're preparing for. But the biggest difference, of course, 1 is that they're really, really small. And 2, that each week you're producing some kind of work or project for that class. You're either producing a sort of larger project or a response or critique to your partner's project. And so let's say that first week you're taking a history tutorial, you have written a 5 to 7 page paper based on the readings, whatever was interesting to you. A day or two before class, you sent that to your partner and to your professor. Your partner has their own thoughts, their own ideas. They write a response to what you've written. You both bring that to class, you read your paper out loud. They read their paper out loud. That is your first opportunity to respond. They respond to you. Essentially, this is how conversation works. And you're able to dive into that really deeply because you've done all of this work before getting to class. So a couple of things about tutorials. One, you can't really not talk in a class of 2 students. So in a lot of ways, students are sort of challenged to speak up and take risks where they might not in other kinds of classes. They'll often then learn that they actually do have something to say a lot of the time when maybe before they weren't sure that they did. And the other piece is that you are producing something every week. And so you get really good at producing stuff and at speaking in class, but then that stuff also gets a lot of feedback, of course, from your partner who's sort of having this experience with you, but also your professor who's going to bring pages of notes, who's going to have read your work in really great depth, and who's going to be really committed to pushing you and your partner in that classroom space. So that's essentially how tutorials work. We like talking about them because they're unique, but also because they're sort of emblematic of the way that things work at Williams, kind of broadly. Not every class is a class of 2 students, but I think faculty are really committed to being in those settings with students, getting to know them well, and mentoring them in that way. And tutorials are just one of the ways that ends up playing out. And then the other piece that I just wanted to highlight is just a little bit of information about our financial aid. Of course, if you are a QuestBridge match at any QuestBridge school, you're guaranteed a full scholarship. What is going to be different is going to be those details of how that scholarship is dispersed, what other kinds of extras or hidden costs is financial aid at that specific school, taking into account. And then, of course, if you end up applying to a school outside of the match, then this question of how financial aid works at each individual school is really important. So one thing we like to highlight is that Williams uses entirely grant-based financial aid. That means that, of course, we don't package loans as part of our financial aid, but we also don't require a work study or campus job. And that also means that we don't require a summer work contribution. So typically when you're on financial aid, you work a job during the year, and you use that money that you earn to pay for things that are kind of built into your financial aid, like personal expenses and things like that. But then over the summer, when you're not on campus, you're also expected to pay back something to the college for that financial aid. So if you say were to work a job, then a portion of those earnings should be reserved to pay back financial aid. So we don't require that anymore. It's been really great for students. I think it's made a really big difference for a lot of students. You can work an unpaid internship without having to think about, paying something back to Williams, or you can work a job where you earn money and then keep that money for you and for your family. So that has been really great. And then a lot of students still work on campus. There are great jobs on campus. A lot of students want the experience, but you no longer have to if you're on financial aid, which has been, I think, really huge for students. And then another piece to consider, again, are some of those other hidden costs of attending college. So things like health insurance, summer storage. This is something that came directly from student feedback. Students were really struggling to figure out how to store their things when they left campus for the summer. And so now we're able to arrange and pay for that for students as well. And then you'll find at our campus, as well as at Bowdoin's, I'm sure, all sorts of emergency funding for things like, you sit on your glasses like I've done many times and you need a new pair, and things like that. So you'll find those different sort of pockets of additional sorts of funding across different colleges, and it'll be good to do a little bit of research to understand the schools that you're thinking about ranking, or that I guess you've already put on your lists. What are those other pieces that might be included in financial aid? Okay, all right, I will stop there and stop sharing my screen and throw it back over to Kate.
Great, thank you. So we've got some great questions in the chat to start us off. So if you're on the call tonight and you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. We'll try to get to as many as possible. We'll try to answer the ones that are applicable to both folks at Williams and Bowdoin first, and then we might get more specific a little bit later on. I'm curious for the students, maybe we'll start out with, could you tell us what your majors are, or majors or minors, and what you're involved in on campus? That might kind of get some questions brewing for our folks in the audience. Maybe we'll go the opposite way we did last time. So Yuritsa, do you want to go first?
So I am a double major and also a minor. I'm a government and legal studies. It's my first major, and I'm also a Latin American studies major with a gender and women sex studies minor. On campus, I am part of the Latin American Student Organization Board as programming director. So I'm like pretty familiar with everything that we have to offer in terms of affinity groups, and I also work in dining, which is really fun.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Yenevith. I'm a senior, as I said before. I'm a neuroscience major. So I'm involved in a research lab on campus. I started my first year. And so now that's one of my classes is like my honors thesis in that lab. I'm also involved in residential life as a college house coordinator. So college houses, maybe some of you might know or will learn, but are like social houses for sophomores. It's kind of the Bowdoin alternative to Greek life, and it's a very fun thing to do. And yeah, I'm also involved in like some student organizations like Lasso and SWAG and yeah.
Hi, I'm Jonathan. So I'm majoring in political economy and I'm concentrating in Latinx studies. On campus, right now this year I serve as the co-chair of the Minority Coalition at Williams, which is a coalition of now 33 affinity-based organizations. And I lead a steering committee that manages a fund of over $100,000 for these groups so that they can do their own programming and events. I'm also a political events coordinator for the Latinx organization on campus. It's called Vista. And I also founded my own group on campus for Central American students. I'm Salvadoran, so I was the first time I met another Salvadoran. So it was cool to do that. So I made a group of Central American students. Yeah, and I'm also on a Afro Latinx dance team as well.
Great. Thank you all. That is super helpful, I think, for our folks in the audience to get an idea of what questions to ask. And one of them that could be helpful to start off with, small liberal arts colleges often have this people think that they're not good for science or for computer science or STEM. It's certainly a myth, but I'm curious, Yanavith, if you wouldn't talk a little bit about your experience with neuroscience and what it's like being at a small liberal arts college and also studying a science.
Yeah, of course. I would love to. So I actually, when I first applied to Bowdoin, I thought I was going to be a government major. And then I met my current thesis advisor and my academic advisor my first year fall, and they're both lovely people and amazing professors. And I was like, maybe I should give neuroscience a try. So I took kind of like a lower level introductory neuroscience class that's open to everyone. And the professor, he's my academic advisor, and he made it super fun. It's kind of part of our distribution requirements. Some people take it to fulfill that. So we have like an INS requirement, which is like a very broad, like just take something that's kind of like nature or like science related. And I think that requirement kind of got me into that class and then made me realize that I really love neuro. And then I was able to, every year in the fall, we have like summer research applications for students who may want to conduct research on campus. So friends were like, well, if you're interested in neuroscience, you should apply. So I did. And then I was able to join a research lab on campus, which definitely intensify like my kind of experience in neuro. And I was able to like learn a lot very quickly. And yeah, I was able to then take like other STEM courses like introductory biology, neuropharmacology, motor systems neurobiology, like all these things within my liberal arts education. Like I've still taken like calligraphy and art and history, and but really get a robust science background. That has been really cool.
Great, thank you. I was super impressed with everything that you all are involved in. How easy is it to get involved in the community? That's a question we have in the chat. Whoever wants to take this one first.
Oh, I could take it. Well, for Bowdoin, there is an activities fair that goes on pretty early on in the year, and it's sort of really guided towards first years especially. It's basically just like a big get together of all the like campus groups that exist, where you can go sign up for their email list, and just basically find out like what you might be interested in. They're also like pretty low stake. If you sign up for the email list, that doesn't mean you have to attend every single meeting. But it's just like a big networking event. And it's also just easy to like do it through friends. I know a lot of the things that I'm involved in now are because my friends started doing it and it just sounded super cool. So
Yeah, Williams, before the classes start at Williams, we have multiple orientation programs. So one of them is called the first peer orientation program, which is the program I've done. And it's for first generation students, or students that fall under the first definition at Williams. At Williams, we don't just limit the definition to first generation, it includes many other first experiences. But yeah, during that orientation, a lot of student groups will either meet with first and then again in orientation, a lot of these groups will meet again. And we have this thing called a jamboree where all the performance groups, we have a lot of a cappella groups and dance groups and just musical groups, ensembles that like will do performances. And then we also have a Purple Key Fair, which is all registered student organizations table. It's a really fun event because you kind of have to follow, it's like a maze, but it's like a fun maze where like you pick up stickers on the way and it's like you're, filling out a little book, traveler's log. But yeah, a lot of times groups also have initial interest meetings. Every group has like during the first week they'll have initial interest meetings. So a lot of those are accessible and available online. So yeah.
I would say, yeah, like similarly, Bowdoin has a lot of programming, especially for like affinity groups or like Thrive, which is like kind of like more on the academic side, but we still have like dinners like every 2 weeks. So that creates space for people to come together. And also like usually clubs are, or I think all clubs are free and they're not like, you don't have to like get on a wait list or like an application or anything. So that I think that makes them like really accessible. You can just like join and like show up once or show up every time.
Keeping on the sort of community route, we have some questions about what the dorms or living spaces are like. I think that there's a lot of anxiety for students that are going to college, going away for the first time. Like, what is it going to be like? Am I going to be sharing a room? What is the food like? So I'm curious. Maybe we'll start with Williams and then go to Bowdoin about what's it like to live on campus.
So yeah, during like your first year at Williams, like student first years live in first year housing, but within that first year housing, we have this thing called the entry system where so we have two, well, as of now, the current two first year halls are Mission and Williams and Sage. And then those on each floor will have two junior advisors. And these are people who are similar to RAs, but more for less on the, I guess, disciplinary side and more of the mentorship and advisor side of being an RA. And mainly they're there for first year students. I think they tends to be 2 to 3 junior advisors per entry. So your first year, you'll have a lot of like support systems. We also have in first year housing affinity pods, which are entries based off affinity. So now we have the Latinx affinity pod, Black student affinity pod, the Asian American affinity pod, and the LGBTQ plus affinity pod. And those are pods for first years. Even if you're in a different entry or floor, you can still go to that pod as a way for affinity groups to meet as first years. Then I guess upperclassmen housing, there's upperclassmen on campus housing and off campus housing. A lot of the rooms, I think they vary. I think Williams has kind of like a diverse like building stock where like a lot of some buildings are newer, have been renovated. Some buildings have been around, I think what Williams first used to be. It's called West, it's just one building where Williams College, when it first started, was just that building. Now it's a dorm space and it still exists to this day. And it's obviously been renovated. It's not the same since back then. So yeah, upperclassmen housing is a lottery system, and it's a whole thing where it's based off your class year. But for the most part, a lot of the people who you're living with are actually really nice and chill. I've never really had a bad housing like horror story. I haven't had one yet. Hopefully, I won't have one. A lot of the people who work to keep the residence halls and their upkeep, the facility staff are really nice people, and they're always there to just chat with. So yeah, I think I don't know if that was it. I don't know if there was another part of that. No, okay.
And how about for folks at Bowdoin? What is campus life like?
Yeah, so pretty similar to Williams. There is first year housing that's like pretty central to campus, which is really nice because I know my first week I was getting lost and like trying to find all my classes, which is crazy because it's such a small campus. Um, so it's really nice to have that and to be surrounded by other first years that you can pretty easily connect to. In terms of upper class housing, it kind of changes. We also offer like on campus housing as well as off campus. It's sort of like, the older you get, the better pick you get essentially. But overall, they're all really nice houses. I also haven't had like a horror story, and it's my last year, so I don't think I'll get any, hopefully.
Yeah, to add on to that, for sheer housing, it's usually quads where you have a big common room and then 2 bedrooms. So you'll have like a roommate, and residential life does an incredible job making us feel at this form, and then they like match people super well. Like I'm still really good friends with all of my first year roommates. And you'll see like people having like flinners, which is like dinner with their first year floor, still like senior year. Which I think it just shows like how good they are at matching people. And then after that, you can choose whoever you want to live with, either through the lottery, as they mentioned, or sophomore year, you can apply to live in a college house.
Great, thank you guys. There are a couple questions about extracurricular, so maybe I'll stay on the life bent before we move over to academics. But a question is, could you describe some opportunities for social justice or community service work on campus? That's something that the student is very passionate about. So whoever would like to jump in first.
Yeah, at Williams, at least as someone who's a political events coordinator for student organizations, a lot of the groups on campus have a history of having started out of activism. So a lot of like the Black Student Union, Vista, and the Asian American Student Union, all of these groups have started out of activist roles and activist movements on campus. And that still is a thing today. I think an example of that is every fall semester, all of the larger groups, affinity groups that make up the majority of the minority coalition will have a ethnic studies teaching where we talk about the past and present and the future of ethnic studies. And that includes the Latinx studies, Africana studies, and now Asian American studies. So like we always have that every fall semester to kind of keep that history alive. And it's always changing that history. So it's always nice to have that as a reminder for first years, and for me is like having done it for my third year now and this time I'm organizing it. It's been really nice to know that like there has been progress, and the event has not stayed exactly the same because things have been changing. And it's good to know that students we have power on the college level to kind of move those things that we're passionate about for. In terms of community engagement, community service, we have CLEA, which stands for the Center for Learning and Action, and CLEA really focuses on volunteer opportunities with like the local education system. A lot of times there's a lot of groups that they collab with that focus on food waste and environmental issues, along with taking students to different teach-ins at different colleges and stuff like that. There's also a lot of dedicated groups that have community service weeks of action or days of action that they'll have throughout the semester. which is always nice to see on campus, especially because Williams College is Williamstown in a way. So a lot of our community service work is really important to us, at least in my experience. So yeah.
I can speak a little bit about Bowdoin and then Getty, if you want to add anything. But I think at Bowdoin, there's this really strong sense of like the common good, as Kate mentioned. It's not just like a thing on a sticker, it's like people actually talk about it. And we have the McKean Center for Common Good. So that's like where a lot of like volunteer community service things are centered in. And then underneath that, that's kind of like an umbrella. There's like a lot of other organizations. So like I've been part of like Multilingual Mainers, which is a club, a student-run club that kind of provides like multicultural language information and like experiences for like first graders. So we'll go to like local elementary schools and like read to first graders in other languages. Or if we have any first graders whose first language or home language is another language that's not English, we'll like find a student that can like tutor them and that sort of thing. We also have like Bear Pulse, which is volunteering, tutoring local English as another language students at the local high school. That's something I was really involved in like my first year. But yeah, there's like a ton of stuff. Yeah.
There's also opportunities through the McKean Center to like find funding for things that you're passionate about. I was working with Catholic Charities Maine in their legal sector this past summer, as well as doing research for the Gov Department, and they offered like funding to pay for like my trip from here to Portland and other things that sort of exist. So if you find like an organization that you think is really representative of like the social justice that you want to bring onto this campus, the McKean Center is more than happy to work with you in figuring that out.
Hey, so we do have a few questions here about research, internships, is there funding for that kind of stuff? Are they available for students, before their senior year? And what does doing that kind of stuff look like on your campuses?
I can start. I just did research this past summer with the government department, and it was funded through Bowdoin fellowships. So they essentially paid me to do the research that I like created and essentially like planned out from start to finish, which was really nice, and it gave me a lot of freedom and a lot of liberty. And I was also working with a professor that I really enjoyed working with, so that was really nice. They offer it, I think, like after your first year going into your sophomore year. However, the majority of people usually do that research around junior or senior year. That's just a little more common, but it is offered. And there's also fellowships for non-paid internships. Like if you find one, the CXD can offer you, I think, like a summer's worth of working with an organization if they don't opt to pay you.
Yeah, I would say I did some research my first year summer, and that was covered by Bowdoin's fellowships office. In STEM, the process is like you either apply depending on the department, or you speak to the professor and you get into their lab, and then you just apply to get the fellowship from Bowdoin. And they usually don't really have like only seniors kind of thing, so it's very open to all students, and it's really exciting to see like from first year to seniors. And then my second summer, I did the CXD funded internship program, which is you can get any internship, and it can be unpaid, and then Bowdoin will pay you kind of like an equivalent of what they would have paid you. And that allowed me to go do research at a big institution elsewhere that was really enriching to my neuroscience background. And then this last summer, I stayed here again. That was another Bowdoin fellowship for research. And we have like grants for academic year research as well that people can apply for.
Yeah, similarly for Williams, there's a lot of fellowships available through Williams, and they're kind of divided into two sections or kind of two. One is academic and one is more study abroad research. So Williams has a fellowship office that will assist with applying to grants such as the Wilmer's Language Grant, which a lot of my friends did, and basically that grant pays for a summer study abroad program where you're trying to learn a language that isn't taught at Williams or doesn't have an extensive program at Williams. So I know a lot of people who did that program for different languages. And a lot of that also you can do research abroad. There's a lot of fellowships available for that. On more of the on-campus or campus-related research, I guess opportunities, we have a Mellon Mays Fellowship, which is a nationally foundation that helps and pays for researchers on different disciplines within the humanities. But we also have the Allison Davis Research Fellowship, which is a Williams-specific fellowship that includes STEM fields. So I know a lot of people within Allison Davis are doing research for either computer science or psychology, neuroscience, and chemistry. And both of those programs are 2 years, so you apply to them sophomore year and you do them the summer before your junior year, and then the next 2 years you'll do them. And often a lot of people will use that for their thesis. I did research this past summer, and not through a third way at Williams, which is the Center for Learning and Action. They have fellowships specifically in relation to like public policy. So I did the Sentinel's Public Policy Research Fellowship. And I basically did research on housing policy and urban planning and zoning regulations. And that was a self-guided independent research where I had a faculty advisor. And they basically paid me a pretty good stipend for the summer. And I got to be on campus and do actual like on-hand research work. And then there's also a lot of like, I guess, STEM research fellowships, not associated with Williams, but Williams will help you apply to those programs. So like Leadership Alliance or programs I'd say like, for example, the Michigan Summer Research Program. I know people do that. So if there's one that isn't at Williams that you feel like it's a fit for you and there's one that's outside, Williams also help you apply to that through their fellowship office or through your academic advisor. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all. So keeping on this trend of more maybe academic stuff, we have a couple questions about, our courses very rigorous, very difficult, and I guess parallel to that is the culture on campus really competitive, and what is that like? And anyone feel free to jump in.
I would say like in terms of competitiveness, the reason like why I even chose Williams in the first place is that I could tell people really aren't competitive here. There is no competition among students. And I think the kind of small school size and it being like liberal arts and having an interdisciplinary approach really, I think influences that because students aren't really treating it as like I'm competing against one another. It's more of like we're here to work on different problems, but on the same problem, but through different approaches. And I think a lot of students value that interdisciplinary approach. Like I know people who they have 3 divisions that you can major in, which is like the arts, the music, and the second is social sciences, and the third is STEM plus or the STEM majors. A lot of people end up doing like a combination of those often. So I feel like a lot of students get a wide, I guess, like for me, right now I'm taking a photography class, a political science class, a statistics class, and a class from my Latinx studies concentration. So it's a wide mix of like courses you're taking. And I guess that kind of speaks to how rigorous it is. I think because you are being exposed to many disciplines and different methods and like how these disciplines do work or do research, you're learning multiple disciplines. So I feel like it is rigorous in the sense that you are being exposed to pretty substantive work that like scholarly work that is continuously being, reshaped and improved. But yeah, and I think, yeah, and the rigorousness is mainly from that approach. But I feel like classes, especially the tutorials, they're very intimidating. They sound intimidating of 2 students and 1 professor. But as someone who's taken a tutorial, is not that bad. It's not that bad. Mainly because like the whole purpose of the tutorial is to generally have a conversation about the topic. Students who do tutorials, I did one on for an American Studies course regarding different ways of writing through protests, like how protests and activists use different forms of writing. And for me, that was really, I guess, substantive, because a lot of people with that I would talk to like would always say they wish it to tutorial, because we just talked about so many things that like I never felt like I had to worry about writing this paper every week. Like, no, like that paper, it's something that I generally was interested in. So I feel like the conversation was really, really, I guess, comfortable to have the conversation with the professor. So yeah, I think it does seem scary. And I think same probably at Bowdoin, like interdisciplinary approach, it's like not scary at all. Like it's really, if anything, you're learning different methods of understanding a topic or a subject.
I would say very similar Bowdoin. I don't think there's really a competitive culture between students, especially typically like professors don't really like grade on curves or anything like that. So there's not like direct competition in that sense. And in terms of course rigor, I would say courses at Bowdoin are very rigorous. Like professors have really high expectations of their students, and the expectations are met to the students' level. Like I think Bowdoin students really like reaching into their toolkits and like working to do well in their classes. And so I think in general, also professors are like on your side. They don't like want to give you a bad grade. It's not like that kind of rigor. It's more like they're expecting scholarly work out of you, and they're like respecting the students to do well. I don't know if you want to add something.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's competitive at all. Especially in the humanities section. I think a lot of my classes have been guided by being able to like make a class group chat or like see each other in like Smith Union, which is like where I'm always at and where I studied. It's actually where Yanavith is right now. And we kind of just like gather around and like brainstorm. So it's really nice to know that at every corner like that you turn to, there's somebody to help you out with whatever it is that you're working on. And in terms of rigorous, it is very rigorous, but like Yanavith was saying, it's sort of the type of rigorous that like makes you realize that you want to be here to learn and that you are here studying a major that you signed up for. Like there's times in my gov classes where I'm like taking them and I'm super into them, and then I go talk to somebody that's like STEM and they're like, what are you talking about? Because I've just gone into like a whole just like conundrum of ideas that make no sense to anybody, but that to me is really enjoyable. So all at your own pace, I would say.
Thanks, folks. There's a couple questions in here about what happens after college. So good on the high school students in the call, kind of thinking towards the future. You're all upperclassmen and you're probably thinking about jobs, internships, all that good stuff. How has your experience been with support services for your career? And as you're sort of thinking about life after Williams, life after Bowdoin?
I can take it. So I'm doing law school after Bowdoin. And I've had a lot of support through the CXD and just through the specific like law person that's assigned here at Bowdoin. And they even offer support after college. So if I decide to take a gap year, they'll still be there to help me through like the LSAT process, through figuring out what school I want and just sort of figuring out what law school looks like to me. Which has been really nice. And it's really, honestly, it's kind of daunting to think like, okay, I have to go find a job, I have to go find law school. And like you get to that point and you're like, oh my gosh, life is moving very fast. But everybody here at Bowdoin understands that, and they're all very nice and very give a lot of grace to you for that. So it's a very big support system that I've found, at least.
Yeah, I would say similarly, I'm going through the grad school PhD programs application process, and the science advisor at the Career Center has been super helpful. She's like very willing to like look at drafts and like things like that. And just my professors are like very invested in me like doing well. So they're also like trying to support me in that path of like identifying schools and what the process looks like and all of that.
Yeah, I'm a junior, so I haven't thought about it yet. I still got a year. No. I feel like a lot of, at least what I want to do is also grad school related. But definitely taking a gap year, I think. Like I've enjoyed my time at Williams, but I definitely want to break from college for a year. And I definitely want to do grad school and particularly in public policy work. Um, I feel we have a career center who's really committed to like helping students kind of learn and discover their different career paths. So they have things for me like I didn't originally didn't think I was gonna do public policy in high school, but I'm doing public policy now. I'm doing housing policy. And I feel like the Career Center. I think today the Career Center just took a group of students who were pre-law or government interested to go to a trial like in the area, and it was really cool to see like that experience. And like now I'm thinking about law school, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do law school, the double master's program. So like, but it's cool to know that like I didn't know I had an interest in actual like court hearings and like how that works in the dynamics in a courtroom. We also have a really, I feel like I talked to a lot of alumni. Alumni network is like a really like they want to get to know us, and sometimes it's weird when they hit up my emails because I'm like, how'd you find me? But they really want to like help you, so I feel like I've having their support and like their like advice, especially as recent alums, especially who have graduated in the past 3 years. They've been really helpful in like giving a little insight of what life after Williams is like. So yeah, I still have time to think about it, but I think so far a lot of the opportunities um there's a lot of resources at campus to help students for that. And I've definitely have utilized them throughout the 2 years I've been here. So yeah.
So we've talked about a lot of the really great things about being at a small liberal arts college, at a school like Bowdoin, a school like Williams. Are there things that you all were considering that you were maybe hesitant about going to a small college? How did you decide that a small place like Bowdoin or Williams was the right place for you? And are there things that sometimes you're like, maybe this is a bit of a drawback or not the best thing?
Yeah, so like oh no, go ahead. Oh, okay. So I'm originally from New York City, so if you ever heard of Williamstown or Berkshire County and Massachusetts, it's very, very, very rural. But that's proud. We're proud of that. We're proud of the rural. But being as someone from comes from really large, I'm from the Bronx originally. So coming from a metropolitan city, really it was a big shift, a big change. But I think part of why I chose Williams is because I wanted that change. I feel like I was so used to the city. I wanted to try at least for 4 years, well, a role I guess what living in a rural area would be like, especially as someone interested in regional planning. So getting to have that experience. Um, I'll say we kind of like talk about this idea of like Williamstown being kind of like a bubble, but in a lot of ways that's not true. I feel like you'll hear about that, but sometimes it's not. I think it's a state of mind more than it is like a reality because Williams does have a deep connection with its neighboring counties like North Adams and Pittsfield. So I feel like a lot of I've been just trained just to Williams. And I think a lot of times students will travel to other places for conferences and things of that nature. So I think it was a big shift at first, but I feel like it really made me focus on it made me take life a bit slower and maybe can focus on like the actual connections I'm making and less so like like life is busy at Williams. I'm not saying it's not, but it helped in a way to slow down a bit and be like, oh, like let me actually like stop and have lunch with this person because I don't have to take a train to go to class or things like that. Where in a metropolitan area, it's difficult to kind of slow down and take a breather. I think at Williams, I've been able to take breathers and I've been able to kind of enjoy the nature. It's also really beautiful here. Like when I first came here, it was just a shock that like places like this exist. Like I don't know, like being from New York City, I've just never seen such beautiful like mountains and beautiful like landscapes. And I think um having that change was good for me. It's made me really more appreciative of the things around me. So yeah, I guess yeah, that was my drawback at first, just like coming from a city to a rural area where especially leaving out of state was difficult at sometimes, but I feel like long term has been really helpful and insightful into um my relationships that I've had here. But yeah.
Yeah, honestly, eerily similar. I'm from Chicago, so I like had a very similar experience where like I got here and like things were closed at like 9 p.m., which was like very different for me. Um, but again, I think in the same way, I really learned to value the community that you can build in small towns like Brunswick. It's really nice to be able to know like who's making your coffee or like who like what store you're buying from, like the background of these people. And especially working in dining has really allowed me to sort of build that community because I'm meeting people that are like telling me about all these different parts of Brunswick that I have yet to discover. And again, like the nature aspect is very gorgeous. Like Midwest is nothing but flatlands. So I like came over here and I saw like the giant steps, which is just like this really nice, just like rocks looking over the ocean. And it all like honestly surprised me. And I think I finally understood like why people like to go hiking and like why they choose that route of life, especially coming from like Chicago where it's like nothing but city. So yeah, very similar experience.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, and I kind of didn't really know what to expect. I had never been to Maine before I came to Bowdoin as a first year. Um, and I think I was worried about like Brunswick being like in the middle of nowhere. And then I kind of realized that it's really well connected. So in that sense, it's like not as rural. And that for me wasn't necessarily like a plus or a con, but I think for some people it's like nice that they can like just go to Portland on the train if they wanted to. But then you have like all the nature right there. And yeah, the nature part was like something I didn't expect to like as much, but it's been huge here. And I also learned I love winter, which was also a concern. I realized I didn't need the huge like L bean boots I got originally. I thought it was gonna be like 30 inches of snow. But
Well,
no.
sometimes you never know. It's good to be ready. Okay, we're close to time here. I'm wondering if maybe we can turn to, we have a question here, I think, of a student who's wondering maybe what advice you all have. How did you choose Bowdoin and Williams, and what was on your mind? What is something that you might pass on to a student who is, you know, senior year in high school, thinking about the match, maybe not thinking about the match, and just looking ahead to college?
I would say something important would be like try to find what are priorities to you, and then look for places that value that as well. I think that's something that throughout the college process it can get lost through like just like looking at names, which is I think going back to like what do you want and how do you want to live your life, and then trying to find places that accommodate that. I think it's a good step.
Yeah, I would honestly agree, and I would also say to like, for me when I did my QuestBridge match process, I was just really nervous and scared that I was gonna pick the wrong school. But I think as you know, I got to Bowdoin and as I got a little more time here, you really learn that like admissions is going to pick you because they think that you have a good shot at making a life at the school that you're applying to. Um, so don't be like too hard on yourself. I think at the end of the day, I'm really happy with my choice and I actually ranked Bowdoin #1. So I just would say like don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah, I guess similarly, like the way like I did the application, the way at least for me, if anything of what I took away from it's a really stressful process. I actually got to learn a lot about myself, like through that application. I feel like it really gives you the opportunity to kind of learn about what you want, like truly, like what do you want to do, and not necessarily what do you want to do in life or in the future, but what do you want your experience to be. And I think like I ranked Williams first as well, so I think in the same vein, like don't don't yeah, don't be hard on yourself. And like I feel like especially in my experience, the people I've met at Williams, like I definitely see why they were at Williams. Like they just click so much. It's really weird because I'm like like this guy. No, like I think 100% of the people like just fit at Williams, they click. And I think that for people, like you will end up at a place where as long as you're true to yourself and true to, I guess the application helps with that, like kind of being true to yourself and what you really want. The admissions people will see that. And I think, yeah, just use that experience to learn about yourself. I think a lot of times I think about who I was, I guess 2 years ago, and I'm like, I'm not the same person, but in a good way. Like this is what I wanted out of this experience, was to have a different experience. And I think me knowing that when was applying, that I knew I wanted something different. That's still true to this day, and I think it'll work out in the end. It's gonna work out. Everything's gonna be fine. So yeah.
Great. That's a very nice note to end on. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your voices and your honesty and just telling folks on the chat a little bit more about your experiences. If you have questions, like follow-up questions for either us in the admissions office or the students, we can direct them via email. You can reach out to us at ours is admissions@bowdoin.edu. For some reason, the chat isn't letting me message that out to everyone. But Carolina, would you mind saying how folks can get in contact with you all?
Yeah, admission@williams.edu. So
Minus the S.
yes, exactly.
Great. Well, thanks everybody. We really appreciate you taking some time out of your evenings. And I hope you all have a good night. Thanks. Bye.